Welcome, House of the Dragon fans. We are back to cover the latest episode, episode 5 of season 2, entitled Regent. Before I begin, let's let you know I'll be covering every single episode. Took a little bit of a break, had some personal issues, but I'm back to cover the second half of the season, heading up to the season 2 finale. So make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications to get all of your House of the Dragon news. So let's get right into this episode. I think it's a kind of a turning point. The one thing that stood out to me is who has leadership? Like, where are the good leaders? I feel like on the green side and the black side, the leadership is in chaos. We don't really have any good options at this point, and we're seeing that the small folk are suffering more than anyone else. So let's start at King's Landing with the green side. Uh, Number one, we come back into King's Landing, and what's supposed to be a victory is really leading the small folk into more chaos, into uncertainty. Number one, they're not getting any food because of the blockade that the sea snake has in place. But when they see a dead dragon, the head of the dragon, paraded through the streets, it really causes just more fear and potential pandemonium with the small folk. That was a terrible choice. And it just goes to show that we don't have any good leadership in place, as we see with the council. Alicent thinks she's going to be next in line with Aegon out of commission, burnt up. She thinks that she's the one that can placate everyone. And it kind of shows you how naive Alicent has been and kind of delusional of her place, in the council. She doesn't realize that really the only reason she's there and she's been protected was because of Otto. Otto was was the power behind her that was directing her. There's no Otto now. And now her hold that she thought she had on her children is not accepted anymore. Aegon's gone, and Aemond has really been his own man for a while now, pretty much since he's claimed Vhagar. So she sits up there, and the entire council, she can't find one ally on the entire council to give her a vote of confidence. And she even tries to go to Kristen afterward and ask him like, oh, well, you can sleep with me, and be committed to me in the bed sheets, but now you can't vote for me in the council room. And she's just not getting it. This whole war has been fought over the idea of a woman being the next in line and being a ruler. So if the war is being fought because of that, and because your side is not going to accept Rhaenyra as a ruler, why would you think they would accept you to rule in the place of Aegon when you have somebody like Aemon and even Kriston out there who they're calling the Kingmaker? Why would anybody want your counsel? So I think Alicent now is realizing her place, and even the clubfoot, Laras, remember she was showing him her feet. She probably thought she had a nice little hold on him. He doesn't even back her, so she literally has no one at this point. Alicent is a woman without power, and I really liked what Olivia Cooke, the actress, has done with this role. More than anyone on the show, her facial expressions I think are the best. She has the look of a worrying mother. You feel when she comes on the screen that she's carrying the burden of her role and the burden of what you think or what she thinks she should be doing and how she thinks she should be handling power that she really doesn't have. It's always written all over her face. I think she does that better than any other actor on the show. And I think that conveyed really well in the scenes that she had, and even how she was looking at Aegon. Really wasn't said, but you can tell based on the last interaction she had with Aegon that she's carrying that guilt of telling him to do nothing, that, you're better off just sitting and letting the adults handle these situations with this war. And she knows, I think, in the back of her mind that that's what pushed Aegon to act impulsively and to put himself in danger on the battlefield. But she also knows her other son, Aemon, and she knows the murderous streak that he has and the power that he wants and that he wants the throne. So she knows deep down that he had something to do with what happened with Aegon, that it wasn't Rhaenys and Meleys that burnt, her son. She knows that deep down, but she still doesn't have, she has that fear of Aemon as well, and can't even say it out loud to him in the scenes that they had, with just the two of them. So I thought that was really well done. Speaking of the next in line, Aemond. Aemond is one of my favorite characters on the show. I feel like a show like this, it's made or broken by how strong your villains are. And so far, Aemond has been a perfect villain. Um, Merciless on the battlefield, totally consumed with winning power, and really is loyal to no one. I mean, the man burnt his own brother, was getting really ready to kill him if Cole didn't come on the scene. And just the look of him, I said it on the timeline on Twitter last week. He has a look of a Final Fantasy villain, just the way he carries himself with the eye patch. And I feel that he had the best scene, Ewan Mitchell, when he was in the throne room looking at the Iron Throne. Just the way his face was masked, how cold and almost inhumane the throne room looked, and how the throne looked as he was looking up at it. It kind of shows you like who would want this position? Who would want to be the sole person responsible for the realm and having to sit on that cold, merciless throne with no one kind of understanding what you're going through? You'd have to be a psychopath to want that. And we see that in Aemon. And we also see that with Daemon. They are willing to do anything to get that throne. And even Helena, when she saw him in the throne room, she asked him, was this all worth it? She knows intuitively what he did, to her husband. And Aemon doesn't answer her, but you can see it on his face. He doesn't care. He just glares at her. At this stage, the closer he gets to the throne, the more inhuman he also becomes. So as far as Aemon goes, I see more atrocities and more killing as we head to the season finale. And what I really like about him is he's basically we're seeing in Aemon what Daemon was probably like when he was his age. That's the kind of dichotomy between the two of them. We see everything kind of leading towards a confrontation with them. They mention each other often. They're two sides of the same coin. So either one of them is going to kill the other or they're going to kill each other. That's really what's going to happen. Probably at some point this season, we're going to get that confrontation. So I'm just waiting for that to happen. But for now, Aemon is in charge, and we see one of his first acts is keeping everybody confined in King's Landing. So he's no friend of the common folk either. So not expecting any type of mercy or any type of goodwill from Aemon as we move forward along in the season. But what does stick with me is what's going to happen when Aegon wakes up. It's going to happen at some point. And my prediction is when he wakes up, he's going to be even worse than he was before. He may even be worse than Aemon, actually. It's really going to see, I'm really interested to see how much he actually remembers. Does he remember his brother burning him? But I think he's going to be just completely out of his mind, kind of the Mad King type of level. I'm expecting him to act like that once he comes out of this stupor. Um, Whether he turns some of that aggression onto his brother remains to be seen. But I expect him to be just war crimes galore, slaughtering people, maybe even locking Alicent up. He's going to be on the level of his brother, Aemon, but more erratic, more, not under control any. And he's going to be completely mad. I think this entire process of trying to bring him back from death is going to make him an absolute killer and just a menace on the throne. Also, something to keep in mind when Alicent and Cole were talking, Cole mentioned that Sunfire is long in the dying. So I took that to mean Sunfire isn't exactly dead. So, they're expecting him to die, but he's not dead yet. So, and I think that's showing the link between Aegon and Sunfire. We saw the camaraderie and closeness that they had before he took flight. So I think as long as Aegon is hanging around, Sunfire is going to hang around. So if Aegon makes the recovery I expect him to make, I expect Sunfire to recover. And I also expect Sunfire to be as angry and as mad as the resurrected quote unquote Aegon is going to be when he comes back. So I'm expecting to see them both back on the saddle and back in the air, causing destruction and mayhem. If not this season, maybe early next season. I'm not really sure how long Aegon is going to be out of commission, but more than likely he wakes up maybe in the season finale, you know, and that will lead into a storyline that we'll have for season 3. Now let's go to the black side. Just like Alicent was, completely pushed out, it feels like Rhaenyra is dealing with the same exact thing. Obviously, she's the queen, so and they're backing her for the throne, so she's not going to be completely pushed out. But they're pushing out her opinions. They feel like you're not a wartime queen. As far as a leader, you've never been to war. Nobody's really been to war, but in cases of crisis, the men feel like they know best. So they're tolerating Rhaenyra, but they're not really listening to her. And I know that's completely frustrating to her because she spent most of her time with her father. So she really doesn't know how to deal with these men and their egos and how to placate them. That's one of the things that women learn in business, in the real world, trying to get ahead. One of the best things they can learn is how to placate or how to deal with the male ego, because you're going to be dealing with men in most business and corporate settings. But with Rhaenyra, she never really learned that skill. So she's really learning on the job. But the problem is the mistakes that you make can be fatal. It was fatal for Rhaenys, and not having Rhaenys at her side is a very big gap. She's trying to get Corlys to replace Rhaenys, but Corlys is, of course, mad at her because he's feeling like you got my wife killed. So he's out of commission for the moment. So in this type of crisis with no one to rely on, no one really trusting her leadership in the council, she goes to the only person she can go to, who happens to be another woman, who is Mysaria. And I feel this is very, very dangerous because Mysaria had ties before with Daemon. She's really not loyal to anyone but herself. And I don't think she really trusts any of these high folk, because she knows that when they play their games, which they're doing now with this whole dance of the dragons, that the poor people suffer. And Mysaria is herself one of the lower, common folk. So she feels their pain acutely. But she offers herself to Rhaenyra, saying that I can sow discord in King's Landing to your benefit. And that'll be easy for her because the people are already riled up by seeing this dragon's head, by having no food out in the streets. We see in this episode she's able to smuggle someone back into King's Landing. So we'll see what type of discord she can, do amongst the people. But we already kind of know is successful because of the preview we have for episode 6, where Alicent and Helena are trying to fight off, it looks like, the common folk. So it looks like a riot is going to be taking place within the next episode. So Mysaria is going to be doing her job for now, but I do question how loyal she'll be to um, Rhaenyra in the long run. But as far as other potential council members that can really help Rhaenyra, I feel like her best counsel are the children, her son Jace, and also Baela. They seem the most self-assured, and I think it's because they haven't been dirtied up by being in politics too long and dealing with all the things that come with being one of the elites. They're still fresh, they have fresh ideas, and I think Rhaenyra really needs to lean on them in this time, because they're also of her blood, so she knows she can trust them completely. And in Baela's case, she rejected Corlys trying to give her um, the title of heir. She's like, no, I am a Targaryen. I am of fire and blood. That's where her destiny is. So that's a potential warrior right there she needs to lean on. Baela and Jace. Those are her two that need to be on her council. Now, in Jace's case, he's had the best, or at least I'll say the most ambitious idea of this episode, where we have two dragons that don't have riders. We need to expand our search and look for any Targaryen blood, cousins or whatever, that can potentially claim these two dragons, and then we can have the firepower needed to go against Vhagar. Very ambitious idea. Let me just say something quick about Vhagar. How formidable is Vhagar that she's able to dominate like this, and she's past her prime. We're talking about a dragon that came over with Aegon's conquest. So over 100 years old, you see the holes in her wings, and it's still the most formidable dragon that we have alive today. And even with that, think about how the Black Dread Balerion, how monstrous and how devastating that dragon had to be, because that dragon's bigger than Vhagar. So I'm really liking how they're playing up what needs to be done to take down Vhagar, how they're trying to mobilize as many dragons as they can to take down this one dragon. It shows you how, really, at this point, Aemond and Vhagar are like the main threat, like the big boss. You take them out, the war is over. So I like how they're trying to convey that. So, what can go wrong with Jace's idea of expanding the set and trying to find more Targaryens? Well, on the good side, like I said, you'll have two more dragons to go against Vhagar. But the problem is, these potential people that you bring in, how can you trust them to be loyal to the Targaryens just because they have Targaryen blood? Because number one, they weren't raised with you guys, so they're essentially foreigners. They're coming from different houses. They may be coming from lower houses. Why would they have the same loyalty to the Targaryens, especially if they get their own dragons? They may decide to be loyal to their particular house, especially if that house has ties to Aegon's side. So in that case, it can be kind of perilous. But I think we already know who's going to claim these dragons, or at least claim one of them. And that's the other person that we've seen in this entire episode, who was Hugh, the one who's trying to smuggle his family out of King's Landing because the king hasn't kept his promise, hasn't given him the money that he needed to work and take care of his daughter, who's looks to be deathly sick. And his wife is like, "We have to get out of there, get out of here." And we see his hair, so more than likely he has Targaryen blood in him, but he's one of the commoners. And the funny thing is, or the ironic thing is, somebody like him is probably someone who would be one of the better leaders for King's Landing, because he knows more than anything how the common people are suffering. I don't think the Greens know that, or the Blacks really know that completely, because they're so concerned about winning the war. And it's going to be the poor people that suffer more than anyone else. And they have been suffering more than anyone else because they don't even have adequate food at this point, and that's why his daughter is sick. So I think he's going to be able to claim one of the dragons, and it wouldn't surprise me if he kind of goes into business for himself eventually, meaning that he's not loyal to Rhaenyra, he's not loyal to Aegon's side, he's only loyal to the common folk, which is kind of what I want to see, because we really haven't had a representative for the common people so far in season two. And I think he would be the perfect one. And I think they would rally behind him. And then we can have something like kind of like in the original Game of Thrones, you had the Battle of the Five Kings. So it can be a battle of the three. It would be Rhaenyra, Aegon's side, with the Greens and the Blacks, and then the common folk represented by Hugh. I think that would be a kind of a dynamic and interesting storyline, because now you're still trying to rule the common people, but they have their own champion. So how could you win as the Greens or the Blacks? How could you win the common people back when you have somebody rallying for them that happens to have a dragon and is proven to be a dragon rider? So that would be really, really compelling. Now, as far as the other potential dragon rider, I think we have to go back to the guy that we saw. I think his name is Ulf. He was the one that was in the tavern, and also the one that looked at the rat catchers. He doesn't seem as pure as the guy Hugh that we saw this episode, because remember when we first saw him, I went back and watched it. When he was coming onto the screen to look at the hangings, he stole money from one of the common folk as he was walking by. So he's definitely in it for himself. So if he's able to claim a dragon, he might be the one that doesn't even go, commits himself to Rhaenyra. He might take the dragon and just go off on his own and just go out the lands, stealing, marauding, and maybe gets his own army together who's loyal to no one except just stealing. He might become like a Robin Hood type character, but one that has a dragon. So that's another potential, storyline where we have four different people competing for the crown, or three competing for the crown, and one just messing up, going around the land, stealing and robbing, because they have a dragon, the guy off. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But those two would be the ones I think are the most likely to claim dragons, because I feel like if they go with anyone else, it'll be somebody we haven't really been introduced to, for the majority of the season. I feel like they wouldn't give those two any screen time unless they were leading to something like this. So we'll see where it goes with who claims the dragons next episode. But we do know throughout the claiming process, there's probably going to be a lot of people getting burnt. So that'll be cool to see some more dragon fire as things go on. As far as what I didn't like this episode, I'm kind of done with Daemon and Harrenhal. Enough is enough. I think this whole thing with him eating out his mother, or who he thought it was his mother, in bed, and the blood and everything, we've seen enough flashbacks. It's kind of like we get it. I think the first flashback that we got, I think it was episode 3, was more than enough. That to me kind of convinced me that we were going to have a Daemon and Aemond showdown. Because remember when he's running through the halls with his sword, he sees it's not Aemon, but it's someone that looks like Aemon with an eye patch on. So that conveyed to me that this is not going to be settled until they meet on the battlefield somewhere. So that, and then seeing, the younger version of Rhaenyra and cutting her head off, I think we've seen all the visions that we need to see. The only thing that really intrigues me is the Alice Rivers character, the witch. Um, I want to see what she can really do. I mean, you're calling her a witch, but we have a high standard in Game of Thrones when it comes to witches, because we saw what Melisandre, what she did in the original, series. She was having demons come out of her from between her legs. She was able to ignite fire to hold off the threat from the north, or from beyond the wall. So she's shown her powers. So far with Alice Rivers, I really don't think she has powers. I think her main thing is being able to spike Damon's drinks and his food. That's why I think he's seeing these visions. So I don't really think she's actually like a legit witch at this point. So I'm not really impressed with her too much. So I need to see her do something clearly supernatural to get really invested in her character a little bit more. But I want to see Daemon get out of Harrenhal. I've seen enough there. I really don't want them keeping this up until we get to, like, the season finale, and we finally get the confrontation. Maybe Daemon, not Daemon, Aemon finally goes out there with Vhagar, and then we get the confrontation at that point in the season finale. I really don't want it to take that long, where he's just having these visions for the rest of the season. I'm like, we've had it for 3 episodes now. They just really need to wrap it up. I don't think there's really much more ground they can cover, with that storyline. So get Daemon out of Harrenhal and get him on the battlefield, have him rack up a couple wins somewhere, now that he has the Blackwoods and the Brackens. I know he needs to resolve the issue with the Brackens, because the Blackwoods were out there doing too much, killing villagers and innocent people. So maybe him getting that together can get him out of the castle and get him back on the battlefield. But outside of the Harrenhal issue, I had no complaints. I thought this was a really strong episode as far as showing, how leadership is really lacking on all sides, and how wanting the throne is the last thing you would want to do as a good person. I think everyone that we've seen that really wants that power, from Daemon to Aemon, um, Aegon, Alicent, none of them are good people, because none of them are really concerned with helping the common man. Out of all these episodes, we haven't seen anybody say, look, we need to end this war as quickly as possible to help out the common folk, to make sure they get food, to get them back working and feeling safe. Nobody, not even Rhaenyra, said that. Everything is about the crown, the crown, the crown, my power, my succession, my leadership, my rulership. That's all the Team Black and Team Green are concerned about. And that's why I think this is the perfect way to kind of introduce somebody that champions the common folk as kind of like that third power in the war, and kind of that wild card. So hopefully we see that for the remaining episodes this season. I thought we had 10. It turns out we had 8. We only have 8. So things have to really ramp up. We really only have 3 episodes left, which is shocking. So I'm expecting hopefully a lot of action, hopefully a lot of dragon action, and an explosive season finale in a couple weeks. So let me know what you guys think. What was your favorite scene this episode? What do you think about my theories about the small folk having their own champion that can possibly compete against the Greens and the Blacks? Or do you think the people who claim these dragons, these people with Targaryen blood in them, are they going to be loyal to Rhaenyra? Because that's a big gamble that she's going to be taking, bringing in outsiders to try and win over the throne and take down Vhagar. But thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week to talk about episode 6. Take care and enjoy the week.